Two, it's $21,000 that went to that. If there's somebody who is going to want to use that, and I would rather sell it locally if we can advertise without spending a lot of time messing with it, than to transport it down put it in the state pool, and there's even the possibility you could throw it into the surplus pool for this combined auction for the school district and the city. There's a lot of stuff going in there, but you get into an auction, I would want to have a minimum price to do that rather than just throw it out there and send it down the road for a real cheap price.
Right now, those things were bought with the grant, so we have to wait until, legally, we have to wait until that's been determined that it wasn't acceptable.
I left that part out. I'm getting to the part how I get rid of it. So, and I understand that. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You have another comment?
Well, so we seem to have made a decision to surplus the tractor, but I didn't know if we had a conversation about whether or not we needed the tractor. So if we're gonna reimburse them with our gas savings, and now we bought it, and so I just wanna make sure that if we turn around and sell it and get $15,000, we're actually losing $5,000 or something, that's not good math, but for an asset we might need. So I just wanna make sure that before we surplus it out, we've determined that we're not gonna need it.
I'm going to go to Ken on this because we had that very conversation. And maybe operations have it, so.
As I understand it, the tractor was originally purchased to, sounds a little silly, but to...
Let's say it.
to lift manhole covers on the property. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but that's what I heard. These are very large manhole covers, not the typical city street size. These are large ones for large underground containers or pipes or whatever. However, we do have a forklift, and we do have other equipment that I think can raise those manhole covers a couple times a year for inspections. And I don't know what else we use it for. I haven't seen it in use since I've been here. But then again, it may have been taken out of the shop, and I haven't seen that activity. But as far as the reason it was purchased, I can't really justify that.
Can we just try the forklift thing before we sell the tractor?
Yeah.
Sean had it.
So I kind of remember part of the discussion around that tractor. One of the things is the snow. We haven't had any snow. We've been really lucky. And when you look at how big this facility is, if we get snowed in, we're going to have a problem. And I know someone in the audience is also used to drive the plow, and the plow can only move so much snow. And there's a problem with where to put the snow once you start to move it. And it doesn't seem like much, but when we get a day where it continues to come down, the thought process behind the tractor was to have the bucket to be able to move the snow so the plow could continue on. The plow is just a truck. And the county, they're out on the roads, that's their priority. So when we come in at 3 in the morning, if we have no way to get out of this building, we don't have service.
Good fun. That's why it's always good to go to the people who have to live with the problem. We're going to move on now. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to move on to the final item, and that's the business item number 6, the status of routes 411 West, 411C.
Last workshop, 411 would be at 411 Camino. We're on the agenda for possible action at that time. Action was not taken. Activity on activity on 411 would be 411 Camino was tabled and brought to this meeting with under the impression that there would be a decision on 412 funding in Olympia. That 412 amendment, as I understand it, is still open and has not been fully acted upon in the Senate. So it would appear that if 412 funding is associated with 411W and 411C, we're at the same place we were, excuse me, we were 2 weeks ago at the workshop, but the same recommendations that were provided at the workshop remain on the table currently for alternatives for reduced funding at 411. And those reductions were 411 would be reduced to 3 round trips per day, and 411 Camino would be reduced to 3 trips a day. And that going from 13 round trips and 9 round trips respectively.
And I'll open this, is that all for you right now?
Yes, I'll be glad to
And I'll open
answer
the,
questions.
this discussion to the public. Please state your name, and we have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Steve Mishler. Again, I'm a resident of Camino Island. If you look at the reduction of the 411s from Camino, I don't think 3 is enough to really maintain any kind of ridership, because a lot of the folks that do ride are students or elderly. And if they're going up for doctor's appointments or to school, if they only have 3 options, a lot of them aren't going to take it. I think 4 should be the minimum. And I think you again need to really look at the services available on Camino and in Stanwood versus the amount of services available in just Oak Harbor, and that people, you know, what they're looking to access. We're much more limited on Camino as to what we can get to even in Stanwood. We've got to be able to get to either Mount Vernon or Everett to access hospital, you know, certain kinds of specialists, certain kinds of testing, VA services, and that kind of thing. So I really hope you look at a good, hard, you know, overview of what these people need to get to before we just look at the bottom line, you know, because Whidbey has more people, they need more service. People on Whidbey have access to more service on Whidbey than we do on Camino.
Thank you.
Good, I'm on your side. I'm always like, no. One thought I had on this was there is a great need on Camino versus how much need there is on Whidbey. Perhaps it would be better to maybe collaborate with Skagit, perhaps give them some remuneration for that service for people on Whidbey versus taking on, you know, a huge amount of expense for something that really doesn't do much for our side of the tracks. Camino is much closer to Stanwood and Skagit versus what our needs are. So perhaps that might be more cost effective.
Thank you. Yes, Kathy.
For the, when do, one question, when do we expect to have a definitive answer on the 411 and the 412? Because you're between the public and the employees that are going to be affected. I think asking for 60 days notice is not being unreasonable. I think it's pretty much a rule. But when it comes to fares, you know, I know that they're looking at charging fares, you know, specifically for the 412, you know, leaving it at that. A lot of the comments have been before that charging a fare is unreasonable for a transit our size because of what it would cost to impose it. Well, my answer to that, or my suggestion to hope to look at, is we don't need to go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on Orca right now. How about we do a Island County, you know, type of fare system, you know, punch card, whatever we need to do, something, keep it local, inexpensive, and donations have been mentioned before, you know, for people that wanted to donate. Actually, for a while there was an additional donation link on the Island Transit or the paratransit section, but it's gone now. They have been receiving donations since like 1995, and I don't see those anywhere in any of the financials, so I question donations, you know, and where they've been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, please.
I don't
Please
want to
identify yourself.
Kathleen Kessler. I don't want to repeat what I said earlier, so I'll refrain, but I just want to make sure that my questions do get answered. I don't know the process that you use here.
Go ahead and restate your question so that we make sure we're answering it correct.
Okay. Well, so my question is, what if under the proposals that you have, your annual cost, like I said, for example, under proposal number 1 is $143,547, whereas 2013, the out-of-pocket expense annually was $588,412. So it's a considerable amount of money that you would be saving by accepting proposal number 1. And where are those funds going to go if in fact the board accepts that proposal?
Where are the funds going to go?
Well, where are the
they gonna
savings,
come?
right? So you'll be saving, I didn't do the math, you know,
So you're talking about the difference.
the difference. Where is that money going to go?
There's a clear answer.
Okay, we can answer that question then. Any other, yes, Mr. Lauderdale?
Well, I'd just like to elaborate on what she said. The beneficiary of the transport of Island County.
She is your wife or the lady behind you?
My wife. I find it useful to agree. The benefit of transporting our citizenry falls to Skagit County in almost all cases. We as Island Transit riders to Mount Vernon or to Everett are providing a customer base and paying taxes in their community. And most of the roads that are being used to transport these people fall in Skagit County. I think clear consideration ought to be given by Island Transit to divest itself of as much as possible of their movement of people in other counties. And let that, you know, don't be proprietary about running those buses. If Skagit can do it more efficiently, let's deliver our customers to Skagit's bus stops with shuttle service like the 411W in all cases, and get out of the business of running buses outside of the county as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, could you identify yourself?
Diane Bolton, and I'm a retired Island Transit operator, and I would just like to speak from my experience of having driven 411s to Mount Vernon. Those buses are always full, and it's a lot of people commuting to school and commuting to work. And 3 trips, I just don't see how that's done.
Yep. Any other public comments before we close public comments? Seeing none, what's this deal? You had one chance at it. You've got 30 seconds left.
We had talked one time
Identify yourself, please.
advertising revenue. Have we followed up on that in any way, shape, or form?
Okay, that's another topic right now, so
Okay.
we're going to stick with
Never mind.
411. We'll come back. We're closing the public comments, so we're going to go to the board. I'm going to start with Jackie.
I'm not clear on the question yet, so come back.
Okay.
Yes, in our last work session, I had asked, one of the other things I asked for is if we could get a comparison. We have the proposals in front of us, but what the actual cost is we're paying right now for full service with our 411 out of pocket for transit. And I think that's been provided back here, it looks like 500 some. That
was last year's total with a lot more service.
That's what I wanted to know. What is the total out of our electronic or out of transit cost?
Well, our costs are actually very small because we're getting a regular monthly grant.
Okay.
that ends the
That's what
end of
I want to
June.
know what it would, my request at the work session was how much would it cost us to continue service as it is for Island Transit? The other thing I'm looking at right now, we saved $130,000 in the first quarter, and it's projected the gas prices aren't going anywhere else, so one could stand to presume that we're going to continue to save $130,000 on the budget per quarter. So that ends up between now and the end of the year at $420,000. That's $500,000. That would go a long ways towards continuing the 411 route. Added into the partial service you got now, which was for the one that, was 174,000, I believe. So, which you're looking at in the budget that we can afford, so now you're up to $600,000. So what can we do with
Can I just say
$600,000?
one thing, is that we've realized those fuel savings, but in the last month, I've seen an increase in gas, unleaded fuel, about, I think it was almost 50 cents a gallon.
It's just because it's coming up to May, and Memorial Day, it'll go back down.
Yeah, so.
It's gonna go back down.
Well,
Also tax revenues.
and, yeah, we're also experiencing a slight under budget in our tax revenue. So those are two uncertainties that we're not banking. I don't feel like we should bank our service on this uncertainty.
Is that all you have?
Just one more comment in regards to what Ms. Gould said. She says that most of the riders using the 411 are a large number of them are commuting to school and work, commuting to school and work. Again, they can afford to get there.
I'm going to step back to Ms. Henderson.
Yeah, one of my questions was, so the reducing both of those down to 3 trips, that was the bottom line. That there was sort of nothing in between there. We couldn't, because I certainly understand that is really minimum, and if people have to go back and forth, so that's what we can afford.
Thank you. Jill?
So Paul needs to answer Kathleen's question about the difference in where the revenue is going from our fully funding it to this reduced amount of money.
First.
And actually, I'm sorry, actually it's not fully funding it, it's funding it at 35%, which is what you've been paying out of pocket, which is what Mr.
He knows.
Okay.
Paul knows.
So the public disclosure information that I provided was a history of the last 5 years of cost. And what I think you were asking is for full cost for the 411 run, and then our match amount. And our full cost and the money that we are reimbursed for includes direct and indirect costs to this agency. The presentation that we provided the board is only showing the direct cost or the direct impacts of change in service. So $143,000 that you're referencing is just the direct cost. It doesn't include indirect costs, which is what we calculate in order to get reimbursed. So that's the first thing. It kind of is, in a sense, talking apples and oranges a little bit. So that clouds the discussion. The second thing, that when we're just talking about costs, we're not really talking about the lost revenue, which was a state reimbursement that paid those direct costs and some of our indirect costs. So that should be weighed into the conversation as well. Those are just 2 points I want to bring up.
So I have some concerns about just limiting it to 3 runs to North Whitby. And I share in some of the sentiment that was expressed today that I am uncomfortable with paying mileage to go into Skagit County for a variety of reasons. One, which is Skagit County is definitely benefiting from those transport routes. On the flip side of that, people wouldn't live here if they couldn't get to their jobs, employment, and services. So we do have some benefit as well. But I feel pretty strongly that Skagit County needs to do its fair share in this relationship. Their cost per mile comes out less than ours. They are beneficiaries of potential grant revenues as well. And I just don't know if they can expect us to continue meeting their needs when we're the transit association on the tightest budget. And I think that relationship just needs to change. But maybe it can't change fast enough. So what I'm really struggling with on the proposals that I see is the part of me that really wants to get service out the door to the people who this consequence should not be theirs. That they need the service and my banker's kid struggle, which is a nervousness about pushing this budget too far and whether it's more important to just stabilize and pull the Band-Aid off and say, we're going to the bridge, we're only going to the bridge. Same thing on Camino, we're only going to the bridge. And the pressure then goes on the Skagit system or Snohomish system to figure out how they're going to get customers to their businesses. You know, I know we can do proposal 1. I think we can do proposal 1 with some combination of maybe proposal 2 where we add additional routes up to the north end of the island and don't go off of it, but I don't do this, so I just decide things in my head. And still kind of be within our budget range. But I'm concerned about running service on the backs of gas, the price of gas, which we have zero control over. We know that our sales tax revenue is a little bit below projections. I mean, I get nervous about those things. And so as much as I'm painting an optimistic picture about where Island Transit is, because I think we are on a really good path, I'm not optimistic enough to go forward with this overly confidently. I mean, I think we can try, but I'm not super confident. And I don't know what's worth, but whether it's worse to gamble and be wrong or to hoard and wish that we had the service.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I tried to pay very close attention to the numbers. Serving with Jill on the finance subcommittee of the board, and we talked about this with Paul. I think we can certainly fund 3 runs service on both the 411W and 411C. I think we could probably fund 6 runs on those 2 routes. If we wanted to start maybe with 3 to see how it goes, I guess that would be a possibility. The proposal is to continue 3 runs a day. The monthly costs are not that, the monthly direct costs are not that much. Monthly direct costs would be around $12,000 a month. I agree with Jill that some additional service to the end of the island would be good, and they're proposing 6 runs there. I think 6 runs to the end of the island could be also added in. I guess I am less nervous about us meeting the budget because I see that we're running roughly $10,000 to $12,000 ahead of budget every month. And that does not include other efficiencies that we are already implementing. So I think that this year's budget and next year's budget is in good shape. And that I've watched the total of reserves and cash rise every month. Sales taxes are within 1 or 2% of what we projected. overall in the first quarter. And therefore, I think we can fund what is called Proposal 1. And I would support even funding Proposal 2 if Jill is interested in increasing service to the bridge. So that would be a total of $19,000 a month, which I think is funded with the current budget.
Mr. Norton, do you have any?
Just briefly, I'd just like to say, there seems to be two major decisions coming before this board very soon, and they're both major in regards, we're talking about possibility of imposing fares. That's huge, in a system that's never had it. There's a history there. I won't get into that now, but I did some extensive reading on fareless systems. Anyhow, and the other one is reduction in service. Is it really necessary to come right out of the box? I'm not saying anyone here in this room is wanting to rush this, but I think we need to take a couple of deep breaths, get the information out, and possibly get through the remainder of this year and see where we are financially. To see perhaps after December, perhaps by the time we've analyzed and overanalyzed a lot of these, perhaps things will change. I don't see a need to rush this, is what I'm saying. I think it really needs the public to know what is before this board. I know you all want to do that, but the seriousness of these two decisions, I think, is critically important. And we don't want to look back and say, my God, we might have rushed that a little bit. So that's all my input.
Thank you very much. My comments are this. The amendment to the transit bill for $1 million really benefits primarily Skagit system and community transit because its focus, that $1 million is restricted to be focused on the connector system between Camino, Everett, and Skagit, Camino, that type of thing. And this is based on a conversation that I had last Friday with the Representative Hayes, that there is no ability to separate any of that money to go to the 411. The 411 appears to have a higher ridership than the 411W appears to have a higher ridership than the 411C, best I can tell on this. Now, we have buses crossing paths, both Skagit, Community, and Island Transit in the same route over there. So to me, there's a lot of overlap in there. And if we get the $1 million on this thing, it gives us a different subject to talk about and possibly a different solution in that we may be able to contract with them or collaborate with them. And this is the conversation I had with Representative Hayes. I can't speak for him, but I explained to him that Ken was talking to Skagit, and they seem to be somewhat resistant to even collaborate with us to come onto the island into our area. They want us to go into March Point, and the same way over in Stanwood, Camino, and Everett. Now, if $1 million is coming here for half of it for us, half of it for Skagit, it seems that that's the way I think it's laid out right now. It seems to me we should be able to find a way, and he suggested that he would assist in the negotiation. And I think that brings a different set of players to the table when you have your representative who is going after the money communicating with your transit people and say, hey, get this together and let's start linking these things up so we're eliminating this overlap. That's what I would hope would happen if we get that money. If we don't, it's a different story. And either way, we're going to need Community and Skagit to collaborate on this. Now, what's before us right now on whether we continue with the 411C and 411W is it's worth, at least worth for me to consider a hybrid of this. Consider this. The 411W, proposal number 2, combined with the 411C for proposal number 1. Camino has a lower ridership than, in my opinion, we have a greater need. coming out of our population base to get our people to and from Everett, or not Everett, excuse me, Mount Vernon. And that is, the combined of that is $79,595. We may be able to hold the threads together on this package if we can keep our people who pay most of our taxes here. This transit comes out of our sales tax, a big portion of it, and the sales tax comes out of the commerce centers on Whitby. I think we have a higher ridership coming out of here who are paying to contribute to the cost of this thing than we have out of Camino. But I don't think that they should be treated as the prodigal child and kick them out off the plan. So if we're going to take action today, I would hope that this would be considered the hybrid, or the board can decide not to take action and kick this can down the road and wait and see what happens in the legislature to make a firm decision. And I would entertain a motion if there's no further discussion.
I have no further discussion. Okay. First and foremost, we started off when we talked last work session. The comments were made that we had enough capacity to pay for this as is in a static condition the way it is now through another month while we wait for this legislative session to end. We're going into special session next week. The governor's put big heat on them. I still think that we should not make any moves considering the costs of printing and making new schedules and getting all kinds of things adjusted until after this legislative session is done. And if there's a $500,000 for us and $500,000 for SCATch, it has to be used collaboratively. Maybe that'll give us a little leverage dealing, and especially if Dave Hayes is willing to negotiate, because I know there's people over there can be difficult to negotiate with. Secondly, the comment that you just made, Rick, and I need to be careful opening a can of worms and disseminating where the sales tax revenue comes from, as far as how the bus service is provided. Granted, your major metropolitan or your major cities are here on Whidbey, but the residents of Camino are Allen County citizens, and as such, this is Allen Transit, so they need to be treated equally. We can't sit back and say, well, they spend more money on the south end, so let's use more service on the south end. We spend more money on the north end, let's do it there. Camino doesn't have stores, it's not their problem. They don't have retail places and hubs. They are, you go grocery shopping, they need to go into Snohomish County, you know, to do anything. There's nothing there on Camino, and that is not really their fault. A lot of that is planning's fault, to be honest with you. Anyway, but we do have, it was stated that we have the capacity to go another month while we're waiting for the legislative session to end. I think that we need to go that